Welcome, Robin.
Good morning, and thanks for inviting me on this show. It's an interesting topic, actually, from the osteopath's point of view. I've been an osteopath for 34 years, I think it is this year, and my role has sort of changed. And I think actually being a health professional, you kind of become educated by the patients, by the environment you sort of work in. And in fact, I've sort of moved into a role that concerns really health education and health promotion. I'm a trustee of a charity called the Institute of Health Promotion and Health Education. And I kind of think it goes really well with this topic, actually. It's about educating people and making people become more aware of themselves and of their bodies. Some of the models of osteopathy, I just share that. The model I work with or have worked with for a very long time is what's called the structural model. So we look at bits that aren't working, bits that are hurting. And a large part of the understanding of the person is also about what's called the biopsychosocial model. So we're looking at how they work in their environment, how they live, how they think, how they are as a person, as well as what actually mechanically isn't working with them. So the kind of two has quite a big overlap. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about, particularly focused on the working from home aspect of life that has become more common now than ever. So I thought we'd sort of look at that. And I think also the other thing, I'd just bring in something also about awareness. Quite often people don't take action when it comes to their health until something goes wrong or something hurt. And most people who come and see me, unless they've been before and realize prevention might be a better strategy, or following perhaps some advice or ideas, that actually pain is what drives people. And, talking about what you're talking about before, awakening, the awakening is finding the pain in some people's case, where that is what drives them to seek help in various states of mind. Various feelings and emotions come out at that point. And in fact, the thinking about it, we will talk about working from home, but actually it's focused people's minds in a very different way about what's good and bad for their health. The idea that pain is a provoker and makes people seek action, that's really very important, and it focuses the mind. But that crisis point is almost like at the end of the story rather than perhaps somewhat earlier. Okay, so the focus of what we're going to talk about today is very much looking at self-awareness when it comes to what looks like the ideal, can I say the ideal world of being, living at home and working at home. But I think what happened during lockdown, I think that changed a lot of people, because suddenly they were required to stay at home and work from home, and perhaps never had before. So that was a little bit of an out of the blue thing. And some people might choose to do that. That might be something that they'd always been hankering for and love to have had, less time commuting, less time traveling, and actually want to be at home and work from home. These days, the conflict has come where companies and corporations are trying to say, well, is it optional still? Is it something we can let you do, or is it actually something now that we prefer you didn't do? And I suppose in some people it was dreamed of, and other people the concept has been desired. But has that changed? And the big question, looking at the strengths of the concept and also some of the weaknesses, it's got its ups and downsides. And people, perhaps when we debate this later with anyone listening today, that might be something to think about, because it's not always obvious sitting there happily on your kitchen chair thinking this is bliss. And it might feel like that for a bit. You can get up and have a coffee when you want. You can do your bits and pieces that you need to do at home. It has lots of flexibility, but maybe there are some things to contemplate as well. We're getting a feeling which lots of people would say, and what's happening with a lot of people is they're missing the social interaction and a number of other aspects about actually going to work, going out of the home. It can even be for peace and quiet, it can be all sorts of motivations. But meeting and working with other colleagues face to face is a massively important part of people's interaction and mental well-being, if nothing else. And I think we will be speaking in a few moments about the aspects of commuting and what that's good for, as well as the downsides of it, because there are ups and downsides. I did a BBC interview some time ago that's on the Body Backup website, my practice website, that actually was an interview we did with the transport correspondent for the BBC, funny enough, and he contacted me, and we brought along a patient of mine who kindly did the interview. We did it in Queen's Park, literally outdoors, over a couple of hour shoot. The discussion was very much about what do you win and what do you lose from commuting. And this particular lady was trying to train for a running event and had actually literally, having started working from home, had lost a lot of fitness in the time that she was sitting so much at home and wasn't using the commute as part of her exercise, in a sense. She had to start again. And actually, when she started running, she started getting injuries. And that's when she first consulted me. She was referred to me. So conversation on that is quite an interesting piece. And about the transport correspondent, you wouldn't expect, that would be an interest factor, but it actually was about people returning to and using the bus or the underground or the train to get to work, or partly making an aspect of that about walking or even running or cycling. So I think the idea about the hybrid is becoming popular, but corporates need to be kind of on side with the amount of work that's getting done and the focus in that. So I suppose we haven't got any still not sures, but generally, I think it's an evolving issue though. It's not a done deal yet. It may take different people different amounts of time to see how they feel about it. From HR online, I was following something, and in fact, new job applications, some of them would indicate hybrid working as an option, and that possibly will draw quite a crowd. And if you don't offer it as an option, maybe that's not going to help recruitment. Well, I think also work motivation, not just the volume of work, but the quality and the depth, those interactions. And I've noticed myself having meetings now and training. I was doing a training workshop for osteopaths yesterday on communication and consent, as it happens, and actually getting together on a topic that is about communication and consent. We needed to be together and in the same room. So that had been often done by online means. And it's good to stimulate interest like we're doing today in a topic, but sometimes it's quite good to get together and also see people. The thing about working from home, I've got a few pictures there. People working at the desk, working on the sofa, or perhaps working on a kitchen table, sitting on the bed, feeling good about just relaxing and doing work at the same time. Not an easy combination, but I suppose it's really how long you do some of these things for. In a few minutes answering an email, sitting on the bed, or sitting perhaps not as well as you might be okay, but doing it on a sofa at a peculiar angle for an hour or two. A lady I saw the other day for the last 2 years has been sitting on a sofa with a laptop. And it took a little while, and she kind of knew in her heart that it can't be good. And then she started getting pain and problems. When I put time, manner, place, it really is doing things for too long in the wrong way, thinking that being in bed is therefore a fantastically relaxing way to be working, because why wouldn't it be? But the ergonomics and setup of how you sit on a bed or how you sit twisted on the side of a bed really can be horribly compromising over time. Yeah, so I think that's something people perhaps don't pick up till it hurts again. And I suppose the other part is trying to find a conducive environment. And I know some people are getting these cabins in their back garden to work in a tiny box, but at least it's insulated and quiet and away from. But obviously getting a conducive environment where other people are focused, you can gain quite a lot from that environment, even if you're not interacting with them, but you've got them around, and it's a bit like a herd in a sense. You're getting some sort of community feel about people focusing and getting on with their work. And I have noticed, the law changed. The Health and Safety Executive published changes to working from home regulations not so long ago, actually, in the last year or so, since all the lockdown produced a lot of people working in very awkward and poor conditions at home. So, and that actually sometimes took months and months till companies actually did look at it. Some companies immediately sent a chair out. It was amazing. I heard from some patients. There was one on a delivery a few days later. But other people still only until recently, and we're talking quite a while after all the changes of lifestyle, had actually then had an ergonomic, an assessment. And I do them for companies. We go in and sometimes work with an individual or a team, and we want to look at really the individual case, because it's easy to say your chair should be X and your desk should be Y and your screen should be there. But until you see the person's issues and symptoms, and particularly how their body works in that environment, it's quite hard to make an accurate judgment. So we mix that health professional with the ergonomics, and that I think is useful as well. So I suppose the other thing about breaks, and it's easy at home to kind of actually miss breaks, funny enough. People work through lunch and work through things because they're sitting at home. And actually, so instead of taking those activity breaks to do something like go out and get a sandwich or go out for a walk, sometimes at home that isn't happening. So it's easy to forget because you get consumed with what you're doing. And even taking, proper eating breaks, looking after your health in different ways. It's strange how working from home seems to allow for all these things, but actually perhaps sometimes that regimen, that regularity of where you go and what you do is changed. So your mind, time slips, and it literally becomes harder to tell perhaps what you need to do for yourself. It's not quite the same. So just to move on, a couple of things about commuting. As I mentioned earlier, the lady who was in the BBC film I made, the actual act of walking up and down the steps and, perhaps not just sitting in a car or a taxi, but actually getting the right footwear. I had a lot of conversations with people about choosing walking trainers, something a bit better than their work shoes. Many people were doing that, but actually quite a few people weren't. And if it is cycling, adjust things properly and look at how your upper and lower body are integrating, because quite often walking, although it sounds like a good thing, you're not using your upper body very much. And so people become, if you like, uneven between how they integrate the two halves. And is it a whole body exercise? So, and similarly, carrying stuff to work has got good sides because it's doing things and it's lifting and carrying, but too much on one side or too much on the other, and that presents also problems. So, and the fitness of doing that, people did get used to 5 days a week commuting, and then suddenly they're not. So perhaps carrying more into the office on a particular day and doing things they're not fit for, the right footwear. Footwear is really something to consider. And then the exercise becomes much more useful, but may be combined, and in fact, probably not just maybe, should be combined with other types of mixed exercise as well. So swimming is low impact and gets your upper body working. So things like that might be worth pulling together within your benefits of a commute when you do it. As an osteopath, one of the key things about osteopathy as a practice is that we look at circulation in terms of the way your muscles are working. So things like cramp and things like stiffness are all aggravated by tension, and that actually also blocks blood flow, healthy blood flow. So sitting with your knees bent and sitting on a chair, leaning forwards, that's closing down an awful lot of blood flow. But additional to that, it's also having an incredibly negative effect on your breathing mechanism. So your rib excursion, the upper ribs and the lower ribs completely become disrupted by posture and stiff posture. So if you think you've got 12 pairs of ribs, if you lose, in a sense, the breathing from the upper four, left and right, or six upper ribs, and the lower ribs are also stiff and compromised, you're losing an awful lot of volume and excursion of your lungs. So that also, with the diaphragm, changes your digestive pressure, how the digestive system works. So coupling that with circulation, that's quite complicated. So as an osteopath looking, yes, at muscular and articular problems, there's quite a complex business in a sense. When we look at people, a lot of people are coming with mixed symptoms. And so feeling dizzy, feeling unwell in lots of different ways, constipation, IBS, they're not coming specifically for those things, but we need to account for what their general health is like. And certainly sitting an awful lot and being sedentary more isn't particularly helpful for those things. And I mean, mental capacity, certainly, without stimulating all of the other things, there's a drop in mental capacity. And so, you know, those sort of things all need to be evaluated in the good and bad of being and working from home. I suppose to mix with that, we mentioned adding other exercise, but the thing about relaxation and mindfulness and working mindfully, I mean, it really does depend why, and I have this conversation with many of my patients about why you're choosing to do the exercise you have decided to do. Now, some people do want that mindful relaxation within their exercise, which could be stretching techniques, but also lots of other more mindful and gentle exercise. Swimming can be very meditative and relaxation, involve walking similarly, even jogging and cycling can have their elements of that because it's rhythmic. But if the focus is perhaps a little bit too much on body image, or then it can be a problem. Or even because of people feeling aggressive, angry, and other frustrations that they may have developed. And sometimes, you know, doing some exercise can help, but doing too much hard exercise of the wrong type can actually start producing injury. And it's hard to stop. People sort of half know that what they're doing isn't really working for them, but at the same time, their awareness level sometimes just refuses to go there. It just refuses to sort of engage, perhaps until something hurts, and then they come and see us, and then they kind of realize something isn't quite right about what I'm doing here. This isn't happening. Sounds so obvious. Sounds really obvious that they should have worked this out, but oddly, when people are locked in their pattern, their habits, their thinking, it's actually quite hard to find that level of awareness in people so they can actually make that change. You know, winning and competing can put people under pressure, but the social context, I think, is really interesting because, you know, getting together with other people, even walking and talking with other people, there's some huge benefits from that. Even people you might chat with as you're commuting, if you do, that's also got a sort of social context as well, and is a useful motivator for people considering their exercise. It's kind of part of what drives the process. A few reflections, I suppose, is becoming a bit more aware about what might be maintaining your problem. So we use a name sort of called maintaining factor. So a maintaining factor is what's driving a problem from not getting better on its own. And so people start with a problem and it doesn't go away. They seem to stop what they think is causing it, but actually it's still not going away. So when we consult them, that's what we try and dig into to work out what might be. And it could be, ridiculously, sitting on the sofa watching the telly at a very twisted angle. And they've done everything else about their gym workout and their workstation, and they've thought about their pillows, and they've gone into huge detail. But something that's what called maintaining is that factor that they've missed. So we dig into that, and actually insidious onsets. Many people come to me and they say, I've had no problems at all until suddenly one day something started and gave me agonizing pain. And it appeared to come from nowhere. But what they've missed are the habituative actions that they do, or the things that are maintaining a problem, that they aren't aware enough of to know that they are the causes. And often there's lots of red herrings when it comes to people spotting what's actually going on. And so that acute presentation, meaning the agonizing pain one day out of the blue, from doing something really innocuous, so not doing something heavy, doing something quite simple and easy, suddenly sparks a problem. But there's been a build-up they haven't noticed. I was interested talking about awakening and awareness, that build-up, those questions that came a little bit along the lines about, did you notice anything before? What was the moment that everything changed? And so that's kind of not different actually from people becoming aware, perhaps in a more negative sense, about, well, actually negative. It's a pointer. If we say pain is actually, a signpost, if you're listening, then it actually is an educator. It's actually changing things, and stopping things becoming chronic is really key, because chronic means, some people think it means bad. It actually means, in the wording of chronos in time, it means you've had it a long time, or you're developing something that's going to turn into a long-term condition. You need to look at the other factors to work out how to address the problem. So we're nearly wrapping up, but I thought just a few things maybe again in the breakout, or people, if there is time for that still, people want to do it, visiting your status now and again and looking at the strengths and weaknesses and the threats and perhaps even the opportunities. And that might be something I think for the breakout. What's been the big opportunity learning thing you didn't expect from working from home, or even the opposite perhaps, but let's look at the opportunities. And it takes time. And I think we're now, a year or two in to people spending more time at home and working from home. So, what's going on in people's minds now that wasn't 6 months ago or a year ago, or a year and a half or 2 years ago? I think it's a continually changing feast, and hybrid working might be the answer, but perhaps later down the line, it might not be. It seems like it is now. And you're listening to your body, and sometimes signposting. When people come and see me, a large part is going for an assessment, a diagnosis, a review of all their hunches and thoughts, and then me to look at them and work out, what I think needs redirecting, what needs treatment, what needs advice, what needs input. And sometimes it's not a lot of treatment, it's really getting to develop an understanding for that person and guiding them to find an understanding. So working from home, it's got lots of good bits, but everything's about reflection. And so, a little bit of guided reflection sometimes is very useful from a professional. That's why I love my job. It's nice to be able to do it as an osteopath. I mean, it's something done for a long time and don't plan giving up yet.